Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever time it is, wherever you are, whoever you might happen to be. Welcome once again to Anime Octane, the show here from us folks at Nerd Caliber, in which we look at a usually recent piece of anime entertainment and talk about what it means, whether it's good or not, what are the bad things about it, what are the good things about it, and so on. Like our show, Full Fat Spoiler Chat, we do spoil the anime. So if you have not seen Eden, the short 4 episode anime that's on Netflix right now, I suggest you watch something else. That is what we're going to be talking about tonight, or what I'm going to be talking about tonight. I am Rodney Brown. I'm the editor in chief of Nerd Caliber, first person shooter on Facebook as a cosplay photographer, Burley underscore adopter on Twitter, and a couple of other places as a tech journalist and a few other things. So let's jump right into what this is. Eden is an original anime video, or OAV, as you know, original video animation anime. Anyway, that's on Netflix. And pardon me, my allergies are a little intense today. So it's on Netflix. It is only 4 episodes, so it's realistically the size of an animated movie. That happens to be broken down into 4 smaller episodes. So it makes it very easy to consume. It is a CG animated series, and the first episode starts with, and it tells you in a scrawl at the beginning that's about 1,000 years after the last human is no longer on the face of the earth, and 2 farm-working robots who are tending apple orchards happen to stumble across a small vessel that has in it a human child, the only human on the planet as far as they know. And they somehow go against, well, they're not really programmed to do anything about the human. They're programmed that humans are dangerous. They decide not to report it, and wind up basically becoming the parents to this small child, who grows up to be the girl Sarah. It's in the inside of the incubator, the whatever it is that they find her in. Sarah Grace is her name. The character, when they find her, is like I said, a little girl. This is a shot from the first episode where the 2 robots, which she ultimately winds up calling Papa and Mama, because they have male sounding and female sounding voices when they do wind up talking human language, which is a neat little trick, and I'll get into that when we get into the things we like. They're the way they treat human language. But so they wind up raising her. At first, you can see that this is their job. They plant, well, trees, apple trees. It's really the only thing they plant, and it's the only thing they grow. Which is kind of funny that it's named Eden, and the apples and so on. They don't really use that at all, but it's a nice sort of throwback. And ultimately, I guess 14 years passes before most of the action of the story takes place. Sarah is a teenager. This is her on the screen right now. And basically, the people inside the robots discover that they exist, or that she exists, and that there are robots that have been hiding her. And so it becomes a fight to stop the robots the bad robots from harming the robots that have been, keeping her safe, and then other things that go on. I'm not going to spoil right now. That make it somewhat more significant than just her trying to protect her robot friends. So, a couple of things that I like about this series, and ultimately, folks, the show is going to be a pretty quick one. It's just me on tonight, and also it's a pretty short series. So one of the things I like about it is the fact that it's short. It's easily consumable in essentially the period it would take you to watch a movie, less actually, and it's a good, interesting concept in science fiction, world building. This post-human robot society, um, in which the robots, for some reason, are fueled by a biofuel that is made by these apple juice. Um, and how that came about, how the gigantic cubes that are, they seem to be something like 500 yards on a side or more, um, and completely reflective, in which the robots live when they're not out tending the fields, are called Edens, and why there are three of them, or why there have been three of them, that's unclear. This one is called Eden 3, the one that these robots that discover Sarah come from, and ultimately where the drones and the soldier robots and so on that are after her and the robots that are taking care of her all come out of. And so it's a really interesting world building as you discover more about it. What you first think doesn't make a lot of sense starts to make more sense. And again, from a sort of a mystery about what the background is of this whole world, how it got to the point where it is, where there aren't any people around. It's very interesting. It's revealed nicely, which the pacing is pretty good. You get a good sense of what's going to happen, or it bridges from quieter moments to more actiony moments well, and parses out the information that you learn as Sarah learns more about why there's a world with no people in it, and why she is in it as an infant, where clearly nobody could have bred to produce her, putting it in pretty blunt and awful terms. Is very is a wonderful reveal, and they do it nicely over the course of the episodes. To do that, I'll save that for well, it's just me. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to go to also some of the things I don't like as they come up. So to do that, they rush other aspects of the story. One of the things I like is that it's short. One of the things I don't like is that it's short. It needs to be probably a couple of more episodes long for them to really fill out things that make some of the actions that some of the characters take make sense. And not that it's really... there are shows that have, anime series that have 12 episodes in which you get through all 12 of them and it's like, yeah, nothing that character did ever was consistent with the character as first described. Why would they do that? That doesn't happen here. It's just that we don't get a good motivation for the characters. We understand it, but it would be better to understand it more. It would be better if there were actually, if they took the time to flesh out the characters and their motivation and why things happen. Because some of them are very interesting, even if they are given short shrift. I would like to know more about why one of the last people left on the planet, as the planet is, it's essentially mostly ecological collapse, climate change plus other things, that basically wipes out most of humanity. And a scientist who is one of the last people left alive does a number of things. Again, it's a spoiler show, so I guess it doesn't matter. But we should probably put up spoiler if I'm going to say that. So spoiler, ultimately, when a lot of tragedy has hit his life, and this is all told kind of in flashback, he decides to put his thought patterns, his neural network, into a robot body, but wipe his memory, because he doesn't want to remember any of the horrible things that led up basically to the end of humanity, or mostly the end of humanity. What you find out, and what her big mission is ultimately, is that there are in fact thousands of people that are in some sort of cryostasis. She was one of them, and somehow was awoken early. We never find out how that happened, whether somebody did it, whether it was an accident, and so on. And that's that's one of the things that this needed more time to flesh out. Um, so that's not like a plot hole or a logic problem or anything, because just because they don't explain how it happened doesn't mean it couldn't happen. I just would like to know how. So her mission becomes in not just saving her robot companions, friends, family, whatever you want to call them. It becomes releasing all of these people who are in cryostasis. And we find out that the big bad, which is this robot here, who looks like singularly like no other robot that is anywhere else in the series, so you know he's the bad guy. Also, he's black and red. Zero is his name, is in fact the robot created from the last scientist's neural network. And that, that's obviously very important, and it plays a big part in the resolution of the show. All of that is really very fascinating, but it would have been even more fascinating if we found out more about his motivation. Anime has a tendency to do this sometimes. Wonder Egg Priority was a recent anime from last season, I think. It was we're in spring season. Yes, it was winter season. Which is fantastic, amazing anime. I would recommend it 100%. When we get to an explanation of a lot of the big stuff that's behind what's going on in Wonder Egg Priority, it's really rushed. It's like, and so it's almost like they present, okay, here's this guy's motivation, and gosh, wasn't this horrible? And here's this guy's motivation, and gosh, wasn't that horrible? Like, let it breathe, folks. I understand you're limited to 12 or 13 episodes or whatever, but maybe back that up so that we got a few more episodes of this explanation instead of individual stories about the trials and tribulations of the four main female characters, or young women characters who are that's all fascinating. You rush the explanation at the end. This does that as well. And in only 4 episodes, they really rush it. So that's a complaint on my part. The CG, this is gorgeous. The CG animation, of the robots are fantastic, and of Sarah. Let me get this one, which I haven't put this up here. This is Sarah riding. She is, of course, like a Ray, in that she's kind of a Mary Sue in that she can fix just about anything. So she makes herself we'll call it a cycle kind of thing, but it rides on a big ball apparently. But that's it. This is the thing that she rides around on, and it's pretty cool. The animation of that moving, of her, it's all really good. There's one point where it falls apart, and that's an extreme close-up on her as she's having a reaction early on. In like episode 2, I think, and the reason it falls apart is not because the animation is bad. It's because it looks like what they did is they took like they created it in CG as exactly as the storyboards said it should, and then for some reason the director or somebody said no, this needs to be tighter. Instead of redoing it, they just sort of zoomed in, so you actually start to see jagging along the lines of the animation. And I was looking at it, that's pretty rough. Why would they put that through? And then I realized, this has got to be just somebody zooming in digitally on an already established wider shot. And, if you're filming real film in 4K or something, well, you can do that if your ultimate end product is going to be 1080. You can't do that in complete computer animation. You can't just zoom in on something. So that's the only weak part of the animation of this. I think the animation is really good. One of the other things that's really good about this, and this actually completely took me by surprise. So I watch almost every anime in subtitles, or with subtitles, because I like the Japanese voices. I think usually, and there are going to be people who going to complain about this in comments and so on, but to me, usually do a better job of capturing the emotional impact of their lines than English dub actors. It's obviously not always the case. There are some things that are absolutely outstanding. Cowboy Bebop, Last Exile. There's some really good ones out there. But my default is to I'll watch it with subtitles. And so I was looking it up on IMDb to get all the information about who made it and and so on. And I see English credits. Like, oh, okay, well, obviously there were English actors. There's an English dub, and there's so many other different languages. And the robots, Papa and Mama, are David Tennant and Rosario Dawson. And the Doctor and slash Zero, come on, give her up here. Why Neil Patrick Harris? So I went back and I watched the first episode in dub and was just blown away. They're fantastic. Dawson and Tennant do such a good job with the making their voices so robotic that you really can't tell it's them, except for little bits of phrasing, and only then when they start speaking more sort of colloquially, as if they have spent 14 years with Sarah speaking human language. So it's the voice cast is really solid, and this is one of the few times I would say watch this with the dub, because it's really good. And that's pretty much it. The music is okay. There's nothing nothing stood out to me per se. The writing is solid. Like I said, it's paced very well and it's exciting. It's decent action. Because it's CG, the Sakuga is all through it. If you're doing CG, you hardly ever have a static face with flapping lips. You can always move something. Unless you're I can't even remember the name of it. Whatever that terrible piece of animation was from last season. And that's pretty much it. There isn't much else that I would say I dislike about this that I haven't already touched on. It's the rushing of the story, the lack of ability to let it breathe, so we don't get proper motivation, deeply explained motivation of some of the characters. I can't fault them for the motivation. It's just that it's kind of handed to you, very quickly as to what that is. And that's about it. As far as tone or theme or message, it's pretty light in tone, even when there are serious consequences and danger to both Sarah and the robots that are helping her. Just because they can't be killed, that doesn't mean they can't be harmed, and that's pretty important. It's still fairly light in tone. It's not going to scare off just about any age group. Like real little kids, anytime any protagonist is put in danger, might be scared off. And the look of Zero might scare some, probably would me when I was like 3 or 4. But other than that, it's fairly light in tone. There's not a lot of humor. But what comes pretty naturally out of the circumstances they're in. It provides, I think, thematically, the idea that anybody or anything can grow past a point of deeply disturbing tragedy. Whether that's an individual who decides to put himself into, or at least forget everything he is and put his neural structure into the body of a robot, or humanity itself. Ultimately, we don't know whether, everything really works out for any of the, thousands of people who were frozen. But we know that they're given an opportunity for that to happen. So I think that is probably, if there is a theme or a message to this, it's the idea that, everybody should be given a chance to grow out of horrible situations that they've either put themselves in or find themselves in. Lily, welcome to the show. We're talking about, in case you can't gather, the Netflix anime Eden. Since I'm the only one on here and there hasn't been a whole lot of interactivity on the chats, I'm pretty much wrapping up, Lily. I'm just talking about messages and themes. And you know, as I said, the message here is that you know, you should allow people the opportunity to grow past whatever sort of terrible trauma that put them in situations that they're in at a current point, even if it makes them potentially antagonistic toward you, and whether that's an individual or humanity as a whole. And it's you know, it's good in that sense. It doesn't hammer that home. And again, I guess I can get back to one of the things that I kind of don't like. I wish they had explored more the the metaphorical connection with Eden, and the fact that, you know, the system that is protecting the cryogenically frozen humans is called Eden. Legendary anime JP fan 2. Hi, welcome to the show. And of course, the robots are powered by, you know, biofuel that's made from apples, and, you know, they're planting apples, so Eden apples. It's kind of like a nice, oh, isn't that cool? Eden and apples, but they never really lean into that. And I think they could have. They could have and really botched it. I mean, there are plenty of ham-fisted metaphors for biblical, you know, stories or allegories. There are some that are really subtly well done as well, and those are the ones I like. And this one sort of pays lip service to that, and then it's, you know, it's just window dressing for all intents and purposes. Which again isn't a knock to it. It's one thing where I think they sort of let something lay on the table, in part probably because of this incredibly short 4-episode series. You know, again, it runs about the length of a movie. So with that, I would say I'd recommend it. One, because it is an easy consumption. You know, it's 2 hours, a little less than 2 hours of your time. Two, I think I'm a sucker for science fiction, particularly post-apocalypse science fiction. And, you know, it reminds me an awful lot of the City and Robot series by Clifford Simic, who was a science fiction author from the 50s and 60s. And an awful lot of his world, well, his entire world, is a pretty much post-human world in which robots are the dominant intelligence on the planet, and intelligent dogs, which is actually kind of cool. But those are fun novels. They're very easy to read, but they all have that same sense of, you know, well, okay, it's a period of time past something that was very important. And whereas in Simic's novels, it wasn't necessarily a big catastrophe that put things into this non-human world. It's still, you know, you get the sense of that was, you know, a sort of a golden time, and it's not exactly that now. In this, it very much is, you know, it's a catastrophe that puts people in the situation that they're in, or the world in the situation that it's in. So that's one of the reasons why I like it. It reminded me of the Clifford Simic books. And, you know, again, it's fairly tightly woven science fiction. It's a fun story. If there's one thing that and this is an anime thing, so of course it's just going to happen. You know, Sarah's outfit when she turns into, you know, she's, I believe, 16 based on stuff that you read around in the credits and so on, is this sort of adventurer outfit that turns her youthful jumper, which went all the way up to her neck, into a bustier jumper. And, you know, cool. I'm looking forward to seeing cosplay of that. If anybody decides to do it, that's really neat. It doesn't make any sense from, you know, a science fiction standpoint. She's the only human on the planet, as far as she knows. Um, and why would she create something that, specifically is designed to accentuate her breasts? It just, it doesn't make sense from a science fiction standpoint. Again, from a cosplay photographer, yay, looking forward to it. From a fan of logical science fiction, yeah, why? I mean, it's anime. I get it. That's why you have a bunch of belts all the way across, the front of your torso now, because it's anime. But that was just another thing that I kind of watched. That it's like, and now here she is at, as a teenager. It's like, okay, that's where we're going. Okay, I get it. And they don't make that a point at all. I'm not saying that they go out of their way to sexualize the character. That almost never happens. It's actually really good about that. And there's one or two sort of male gaze shots, but only one or two. So, it's not an ecchi series by any means. That's not what I'm saying. But it was something that I noticed and kind of went, yeah, okay. Anime, you strike again. So that's it, folks. That's really the roundup of Eden. I would recommend it. Score of out of 10, 6.5. If they had added 2 episodes on to stretch out the stories of the characters and give us a little deeper motivation, it'd probably be higher than that. And that's the only reason it's not a 7 or an 8. And that's it, folks. That's our show. Tomorrow, Nerd Week Live is our nerd news show. We'll be talking about a bunch of things at E3, of course, because E3 just happened. But we'll also be talking about a bunch of other news that dropped, some really interesting stuff outside of the gaming world, in the comics world and the TV and movies and so on. So 8 o'clock tomorrow, tune in for that. And our full fat spoiler chat for next Thursday, or this coming Thursday, is a show that I should have on the top of my head. But I don't, so I'm looking it up right now, and that's why I'm just sort of blathering on so that nobody can tell I'm just sort of looking up. Oh, yeah, of course, Love, Death, and Robots, which premiered 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we're finally just getting around to it. So Love, Death, and Robots, if you haven't seen it, check it out. They're, I think, 8, but they're like 15-minute individual short story animations. So again, you can do this thing in a length of a movie, a couple hours. And if you like science fiction and robots and stuff like that, and some classic, really classic science fiction stories being animated, check it out. Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix. So we'll see you then. We'll see you tomorrow night, or we'll see you next week where we're doing No Nerd Caliber. And No Nerd Caliber is, because we'll be doing Luca, the new Pixar movie, for Full Fat Spoiler Chat 2 weeks from now. So our next Monday show will be No Nerd Caliber, about our top 3 and bottom 1 Pixar movies. So we'll see you then. Stay safe. Get vaccinated if you haven't already. Come on, folks. No, there's absolutely no reason not to. People are getting sick again because guess what? They didn't have the vaccine. So get vaccinated, folks. It's safe. There are no microchips. Don't buy that stuff. And we will see you in another show.